How's it going, everybody? This is Andrew Gazdecki, the CEO and founder at Business Apps, and today I'm going to go over a topic that a lot of you are probably wondering in terms of what is Apple doing in terms of their new rejection notices and what does it really take to get apps consistently approved by Apple. So with that being said, I'm sure again a lot of you are probably wondering what is going on with Apple. What are they doing? And to put it plainly, they're simply raising their standards. And as a company, we've been speaking with them and really learning to see what they're looking for in each app that's uploaded to the iTunes App Store. And it's really all about uniqueness and quality inside of your app. And I'm going to be going over a lot of examples in this presentation that shows you what is not allowed, what is going to get your app rejected, and to really help you understand that, meet Steve over here, and he's reviewing your app with higher standards than ever. So you really need to be sure that when you submit an app to Apple, that it has every single part of it buttoned up to the point where there is no reason for Apple to reject the app. And this is an example of how things are changing, how rapidly this environment is changing. So this app right here was approved July 10th on 2017, but as a company, we are no longer going to be submitting apps like this because Apple has raised their bar and raised their standards. And you may be looking at this app and thinking it looks great, but look at these screenshots right here. They're blurry. It's hard to understand really what the loyalty system is. You can see it's even cut off on the iPad images. These apps will no longer be approved by Apple. They've made that very clear to us. And also, I want you to meet Pete as well. You want to make your clients look as professional as possible, and this app just does not scream professionalism. And so, as you're working with your clients, your goal is to make them look as professional and have their apps look as unique and have as much useful technology built into them to ensure that they are approved by Apple. So what have we really learned this week to really break it down? So in short, Apple has really sent us a message that we need to improve the quality of the apps that we submit, and they're going to be looking at each app that we submit with a higher standard. And as a company, we may have been the first to receive this sort of strong message from Apple, but we're probably expecting other companies to go through the same thing, but like I've always said from the beginning, if Apple is raising their standards as a company, then so are we, and we're definitely going to be implementing certain processes that really will help guide you guys to create higher quality apps. And that's really what the name of the game is. It's just creating higher quality apps, which goes from everything from higher quality screenshots. The design of your app is dynamic and clean. The app is useful. When you use the app, there's useful functionality and it's not just full of content or website tabs and links. It actually has a purpose that a user would use the app for more than once. The app name is in uppercase and not just in lowercase, and it has a description that sounds professional. It uses images across every feature, and there are no blank or white areas inside the app. And I would also definitely encourage you all to utilize the new design tools that we're releasing with Cardiff to create really unique and modern app designs that'll really impress the app reviewer when he goes through your app. And one major thing I want to point out is Apple has not banned mobile apps for small businesses, but they have lowered their tolerance for poor quality apps that lack high functionality. So case in point, again, it's time for you as an app developer to raise your development standards. So if you're not a designer, you're going to need to hire a designer, or you can utilize our design service. You really need to understand that your app will simply not be approved moving forward unless it is really a high quality application. And some suggestions that we're making is starting with the screenshots. Let your screenshots show value to your potential customers, and these drive additional downloads. And you can see that these screenshots tell the person what the app is used for, and they just look so much more professional than the screenshots that we've typically been seeing submitted by a lot of our partners. And there's a lot of tools out there to create these sort of screenshots where you can have the text at the top, a nice background, an iPhone frame, and then a screenshot of your app, such as DaVinci Apps or Appear.io. Both of these services have a free plan, and we strongly recommend that you begin using these tools because, in the end, better quality apps is a win-win for everybody, and they will drive more installs, and you'll have happier customers because their customers will download the mobile app and utilize the mobile app more than they would otherwise. And also your description. You really want to be telling Apple why your app rocks. What about it is the app used for? What reason do customers have to download and use this app more than once? And if you read this text right here, the most important thing to consider is that you have at least 255 characters to convey your app's worth. And that is roughly 3 to 4 lines of text that a user gets to see on your app's profile without having to tap on the more to extend to the full description. So the first 3 to 4 lines is the most important. And then the first block of the description is known as above the fold, and then there's the below the fold. And so unfortunately, not a lot of people click that more button and read the full description. So you definitely want to focus on the top and really put in the text that really makes people want to download your app, but also understand that the Apple reviewer is going to be reviewing your app description as a whole. So in conclusion, you really want to be treating your app description like an advertisement for your app, why your customer is going to get excited about it. And that is how reviewers at Apple are now viewing app approvals as well. So here's a good example of a potential app description. So right at the top, it gives you a reason to download the mobile app. It says get a free 24-ounce drink when you download our app. Pizza Palace in San Diego is the place for friends, family, and the best pizza in town. And then it also has bullet points in terms of what the app is actually used for, such as mobile ordering, rewards, menu, news, and then also a nice quote from a local magazine about the pizza place. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a book that you write where it's this huge description, but it needs to be compelling and give the user an understanding of why this app has value in the App Store. And if your app has been rejected, we strongly consider that you check out the new unique layouts that we're going to be offering in Cardiff. So we have a new grid menu, a scrolling menu, and these menus are really, really unique in appearance, and there's a lot of customization that you can do with these. So I strongly recommend that if you have already had an app rejected, check out these new layouts because they really will add a lot more visual appeal to your application. And again, that's what Apple is really, really starting to look for is just higher quality apps. And as we go into, why are apps being rejected and why are some apps being approved? Well, here's a good example. So this is a real iPad screenshot that was submitted and rejected. So if you're creating apps for iPad, you have to optimize the images or don't submit the app as an iPad version. We will simply not submit it as a company because we know it's just going to be rejected now, like this app here was as well. And you can see just the small details. The text is cut off, the imagery at the top, it's all cut off, and this was an actual screenshot used in the iPad version of a client's recent app. And again, the name of the game is to just create really beautifully designed apps. And if you look at these two screenshots right here, you'll see that the app has a really nice design. It really has its most valuable features located towards the top of the application, and it really has a clear value proposition to the user as soon as they open the app, and it looks like it was professionally designed. And so again, you want to focus on placing these high value features first, such as your event menu or your VIP rewards program, because when the reviewer opens up the app, typically the first features they're going to be looking at are the first ones. And as a user of the app, that is typically how a user engages with the mobile app as well. They look at the first features first, and those need to be as prominently displayed in your layout as possible. And again, Apple has a new standard for our apps, so I'm going to give you some more examples of poorly designed and rejected apps. So these ones not pretty obvious here. So these two apps were recently submitted and rejected, and you can see just the design is poor. There's not a lot of thought. The one on the left, it's just a very confusing, like, what does this app do? And then the one on the right is pretty bad as well. It just will not be accepted. And in my opinion, it should never have been accepted even in the past, and it definitely will not be accepted in the future. So again, the bar has been raised, and these types of designs will simply not be approved by Apple. And also, I will continue to iterate, we will not submit these apps because we have been given information that they will not be approved. So if you submit an app to us like this, we simply won't reject it, and we'll be reaching out to you and let you know that you need to improve the quality of your app design. And then also it's the small details that are really starting to count. The main navigation on these two examples right here, you'll see that they cut off. And that is also a small detail, but still equally as important because Apple looks at the app as a whole. So when they see even just small items that appear to be quickly rushed or designed or just doesn't look like a professional quality app, it signals to them that it's a poorly designed app that was quickly created, and they deem it as a cookie cutter app, and thus it will be rejected. So if you look at this app on the left, you'll see that two of the main features in the app are cut off in terms of text, and that gives a terrible user experience for the person who is going to be using the app, the customers of this business. I'm not really sure what these features do unless I click on them. And so you really want to make sure that these sort of small details don't get past you. And then also we're seeing that very plain home screens and little things such as the example on the right has loading screens on the news ticker. This just kind of shows that the app wasn't given time to properly load to take your screenshots. And when we look at this, it's a very plain app. There's not really much going on in terms of the design or telling me what the Coach Stan app is really, what am I supposed to do when I first launch this app. So again, if you're going to be using the top left slide out navigation option, really make sure that your home screen is really dialed in and it has a very professional look and feel, and it really isn't just plain and minimalistic, because that definitely is a design that we've been seeing rejected as well, just because it signals to Apple that not a lot of time was spent on this app, and thus it should not be in the app store. And so also you'll look here and you'll see this app on the left-hand side looks like a pretty well-designed app, but still their main feature, which says reserve and request, is cut off in terms of their text. And again, I can't stress the importance of having this text not cut off. And if you do have features that have text that is longer, you need to use different layouts in order to accommodate these longer titled features. And so it gets worse. So these are some of the apps that have been rejected for some pretty obvious reasons. So this is an app that we pulled where we're just seeing entirely blank images, and this is just going to cause apps to be rejected. I mean, you got to ask yourself, there's a messages tab that's just a black screen, and the contact feature doesn't have any location images, there's no text. That's instantly going to be rejected. These apps, pretty straightforward. There's no home screen, so these will definitely be rejected moving forward. And yes, these apps were actually submitted to Apple, and obviously they were definitely rejected. And again, here are just more examples of just the screenshots or the images inside the app when you load into them. They're just blank, or they just do not represent an engaging app with functionality that a customer would actually benefit from. And Apple is simply not accepting apps like this anymore. And again, you got to ask yourself the question when you're designing these apps, would you accept these apps into the App Store? If your app had screenshots like this, you opened, say, this listings feature, and you saw just a big blue screen, I personally wouldn't approve these myself. So it's completely understandable on my end as to why Apple is rejecting a lot of these apps. Now, going back to the iPad version, so you really need to think if you're going to be submitting for iPad, make sure that it's dialed in. And this is just another real example of a rejected app where when the reviewer opens it up on iPad, he instantly can see that there's been no thought put into the iPad design, and this is going to be instantly rejected. And so, again, we won't submit this if we see this. If we see, also, I'll note that the settings icon is green and the other tabs are blue, which puts a little bit of design and consistency. And so those little details also matter. Here's another one. This image here is commonly seen where there's essentially no content and it's hard to really see. So it says call, but it's got a blurry background and it just does not look professional. And so again, with the bar being raised, these apps are just going to be rejected and rejected. And yeah, these are real apps that we've submitted into the App Store. And it makes a lot of sense why Apple is rejecting this. Is you pull this up and there's no home screen. And so it's a completely white app with um, features that on a big blank white screen. So again, if you're going to be uploading to iPad, make sure it's really dialed in. Otherwise, we are not going to be approving it. And also it includes things like stretching images. So if you're just taking your iPhone images and you're stretching them to accommodate the iPad screen, we're not going to be submitting that either because it's not going to be approved by Apple. So when you submit an app, we may send it back for recommendations on how to improve the app to ensure that it's approved the first time it is submitted. And I cannot stress the importance of how making a great first impression to Apple really is, because when you first have an app rejected, it makes it harder to have it approved a second time because you really need to raise the bar even higher on your second attempt when going through an Apple reviewer, since they've already seen the app was rejected, and having it approved after rejection is typically harder. So it's not impossible, but again, I can't stress the importance of making a great first impression to Apple with each and every app that you submit. So if you put in a little bit of extra effort, your app will be viewed as unique and Apple will approve it. And this is a good example of an app that was approved that has really engaging screenshots. It has a good app description. The design is really well made. It has features that are really valuable to users. And this is an app that a lot of customers are using. And when you look at the app from a holistic standpoint, from the review page to the screenshots to the description to the features, it's a really valuable and engaging app for customers. So here's a quick app publishing checklist. Make sure you have great screenshots. Make sure your layout is as unique and your navigation is as clean as possible. It's a high quality design. You want to limit the amount of content and website driven features and focus on native functionality. That's what Apple is really looking to see as well, is less content driven apps that could arguably just be mobile websites. If you're going to be building apps for Apple, they want to see apps that have use that goes beyond just a one-time look in terms of viewing PDFs or loading website tabs or just information about a business. It needs to have an actual function that a customer would use more than once. And moving on to iPad again, if you're uploading for iPad, spend extra time on these images or exclude it. That's definitely an option. If you don't have the ability to properly make your app look really great on iPad, just exclude it. That's my best advice there. And I would go as far as saying that for most apps, I would probably exclude iPad because it just gives the Apple reviewer another reason to reject your app. And also, if you are uploading multiple apps, plan on uploading them one at a time to avoid spamming the App Store. Because when you upload multiple apps, typically you'll be have your apps will be reviewed by one person, and that person will be viewing all of your apps at the same time. And if they all look very similar, they will likely be rejected. And so important items to note is we will not upload more than one app into an account at a time until it is approved. We will be moving a bit slower for the next month just to ensure our new process is showing high approvals. We really want to make sure that when we upload an app, it is approved and we're not just sending it and crossing our fingers. We really want to make sure that we are meeting Apple standards because we respect them. And we also agree that the bar in this industry should be raised. And we're really proud to be one of the first companies that's really going to be trying to lead this effort with all of our partners. And so for rejections, we're going to require you guys to upload with one of the new Cardiff layouts, which again are really unique layouts that will differ from any other app that you have previously submitted. Again, we'll also be personally reviewing each app to ensure that it is submitted in a way that shows high quality to Apple the first time. And again, since we publish so many apps, Apple does have a higher standard for us as a company now. And if you're a high publisher partner, that same thing applies to you as well, as you really need to start thinking, how can you increase the uniqueness of your apps? What additional functionality can you add in? Really making sure that every single feature that is in your app has a background image. Just really making sure that you have a high quality app. And when you look at it yourself, go through every single feature and make sure there's no reason for an app reviewer to say that this was built with a template or you're spamming the App Store or it's minimal functionality, etc., etc., etc. There's just so much that we can be doing better as a company. And as we've been going through these rejections, we have kind of been able to say, yes, that kind of makes sense as to why they would reject this app because it really is either missing an image or it's missing content or it just isn't professionally designed. And with Apple's bar being raised, it makes complete sense. And so moving forward, it's definitely in everybody's best interest to have that same sort of attitude that you are going to raise your bar as well, and you're definitely going to design higher quality apps. But always understand, we're solving real problems with really powerful mobile solutions, and we're going to continue to improve our software and give everyone more options to customize and make your apps as unique as possible. So we're definitely with you guys every step of the way as Apple continues to raise their standards. In our 7 years in business, we've typically seen Apple raise their standards every year after the Apple Developer Conference, and this year was no different. And just understand you're working with the best team in the industry here. We have all the resources, we have all the dedication to ensure that everyone's apps are approved, and we're going to be setting these new guidelines in place to really ensure that you are creating really amazing app experiences that Apple wants to see. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask. But again, to start, make sure that you begin figuring out ways to really improve the quality of your apps, and we should be seeing consistent app approvals once again. So thanks everybody for listening to this. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at support@businessapps.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks everyone.